How long can you live with diabetes? What is the life expectancy of a type 1, a type 2, or even a type 1.5 LADA diabetic such as myself? The latest research is showing some exceptional news. You can outlive your non-diabetic peers provided you are aware of the main factors influencing your health. And what are they? Which we will discuss in detail today. 1. How fast and accurately have you been diagnosed? 2. Your doctor's overall view on the A1C and their ability to tailor your treatment to your specific diagnosis. And 3rd, and most importantly, how promptly you execute on the correct diet plan. And what is that correct diet plan? Before we begin, let me welcome all of you Resilient Diabetics out there. This is the channel we turn ordinary, struggling diabetics into extraordinary, well-controlled diabetics. If you don't know who I am and you are brand new to this channel, I welcome you. My name is Sampat, and I am an insulin-dependent diabetic diagnosed a little over 6 years ago. So the proud owner of a pancreas that's gone on a permanent and lifelong vacation. So not only am I a diabetic just like you, where we will be walking that walk and talking that talk together, but I do also have a University of Bachelor of Science degree in nutrition dietetics, and that does come in handy in discussing all the intricacies of being a diabetic. The unique information presented today will only be found here on the Resilient Diabetic. New, life-changing episodes are released weekly. So if you want to learn more and you want to be notified by YouTube that a new video has been published, then the only way to do that is to first hit that subscribe button, followed by the gray notification bell. Then you must choose turn on all notifications. And of course, if you liked what you've seen and learned today, please hit that like button. Having diabetes won't necessarily change someone's life expectancy. It's how diabetes progresses over time that really matters. The first question we all ask ourselves upon diagnosis is, how will this disease affect the length of our lives? But diabetes is complex, with many different variables and possible complications, and each one of us is different from one another. So it's hard to know how the condition will affect life expectancy. However, we do have some hardened statistics that bear out some truths and realities. A 2010 report from the United Kingdom estimated that type 2 diabetes life expectancy is reduced by up to 10 years, while a type 1 diabetes is reduced by at least 20 years. That is staggering. I am a LADA type 1.5 diabetic, which is technically a type 1 because there's no pancreatic functioning. The only difference, I got this later in life due to a severe gluten allergy attack. That is where my immune system subsequently killed all my pancreatic beta cells that produce insulin in an attempt to protect the whole body. But what's worse for me, just like a type 2 diabetic, my body can become very resistant and very quickly if the wrong diet and medications are in play. So getting this right from the very beginning and circumventing all the noise has been my biggest challenge. So in order to live that long, healthy life free of complications, there are some factors, key factors, that will influence the end result that we all must be aware of. And I bet this will come to a big surprise for many of you today. The first is how fast this disease was caught. The faster one catches this disease, the higher the probability of saving the pancreas. Each one of us has different pancreatic functioning, meaning we all have varying amounts of insulin production, from not at all to 100% functioning, but with only slight resistance issues. In my case, it was due to a latent autoimmune attack. But for many diabetics, the pancreas has just been worn out or is burnt out due to years of excessive carbohydrate intake. The body has become highly resistant to insulin due to the fats known as triglycerides that have been stored in all the wrong places, such as inside our muscle tissues, within the liver, and in and around all the body organs. But as we have discussed, these fats are not coming from the fats we eat, but rather from the excessive carbohydrates that have been consumed, both the good and the bad. It is then our livers that are converting these carbs into fats, which is the cause of insulin resistance. Remember, in type 2 diabetes, years of the pancreatic beta cells having to pump out ever-increasing higher and higher amounts of insulin because of the resistance then begins its own demise. It just gets tired and worn out. But another very important point to factor in is that all of this can occur years, sometimes decades prior to being diagnosed. So by the time of diagnosis, 50% of the beta cell functioning may have already been lost for many, many diabetics. And this is where every diabetic is unique. I was completely misdiagnosed at first, and unfortunately, many of you will be too. You will be given the standard playbook and shuttled out that doctor's door with a bag full of medications, confused and lost for years. I was just assumed to be a type 2 diabetic, even though the evidence was staring my doctors right in the face. I had lost significant amounts of weight in a very short period of time, but I was still treated as a type 2 diabetic with all the wrong medications. You must, upon diagnosis, know the functioning of your pancreas and track it over time with the right tests. The C-peptide test is one of those important tests, but I must warn you, it takes a very, very good doctor who can interpret the results. A C-peptide test in isolation means absolutely nothing without knowing the corresponding blood sugar levels at the time of the test. Those doctors who are aware of all the new groundbreaking research will first find a way of allowing a newly diagnosed diabetic, especially a type 2, to rest the pancreas, thus saving it over the long run, meaning their therapy will be different from the standard playbook all doctors will use. They may actually give a diabetic not only insulin, which allows the pancreas to rest and regenerate, but just as, if not more important component, have them modify the diet and have the patients lower the amount of carbohydrates consumed. And all of this should be done immediately upon diagnosis for the best long-term results. They know that if the pancreas is pushed and worked too hard and to a certain point, it will continue to fail. The remaining cells that are left just cannot keep up, and they subsequently die. So what happens to many diabetics whose pancreas are failing? The doctors may incorrectly put them not only on sulfonylureas, which makes your pancreas work harder, but then they're still put on a high carbohydrate diet by the nutritionist. Can you see now how this would affect life expectancy? Next is a hard one to swallow. Your doctor's view on blood sugars and the corresponding A1C values. This will undoubtedly make or break one's life expectancy. The body's blood sugar range is carefully controlled in a healthy individual, which will usually measure around 80 milligrams a deciliter in the blood. So how much blood sugar or glucose does the body want at any given time? Well, think of it this way. The body contains approximately 5 liters of blood. This amounts to around 4 grams of sugar in the blood at any given time, which is less than a teaspoon of sugar. Any more than that, it becomes toxic to the body. There is one more important component every diabetic should know, because this is where the first piece of the puzzle comes in when it comes to life expectancy. What are the normal blood sugar ranges for those without diabetes? Fasting blood sugars in the morning before eating are usually between 70 to 90 milligrams a deciliter. 1 hour after a meal, it's usually between 90 to 130 milligrams a deciliter. 5 or more hours after eating, it's back to that baseline of 70 to 90 milligrams a deciliter. So let me repeat this because it's so critical to understand. 5 or more hours after eating, it is back to that baseline of 70 to 90 milligrams a deciliter. During the day, levels tend to be their lowest before meals. Now, what about us diabetics? Well, as you know, our goalpost gets unjustly moved. Depending on your doctor, your exact diagnosis, your health condition, your age, they would want your fasting blood glucose levels between 80 and 130 milligrams deciliter. Your 2-hour post-meal levels to be 180 milligrams deciliter or less. Type 1 or type 1.5 diabetics such as myself that are insulin dependent generally even have a higher threshold due to fear of hypoglycemia. There have been some great studies done on the hemoglobin A1C blood sugar levels and mortality. The big shock came from a British study that looked at the A1C levels in people with and without diabetes. Regardless of whether a person had diabetes, the study showed that for every 1% increase in the A1C upped the risk of death from all causes by 24% in men and 28% in women. Nearly 3/4 of the deaths in the study came from people with moderately elevated hemoglobin A1C levels between 5 and 6.9. In people with type 2 diabetes, they found every 1% rise in the A1C added 18% to a person's risk of heart disease, and there was a 28% jump in risk of peripheral vascular disease. In normal people, A1C ranges from 4 to 5.6, but in people with diabetes, it can range from around 5.7 to around 20. So a 1% change is clinically significant to our health. My first set of doctors wanted my A1C to be in the mid to high 5s. My new endocrinologist wanted it much, much higher. Some doctors want their patients to be in the 8s. But this is not rocket science. There is damage being done to the body with sugars constantly that high. So the next question is, why would doctors and the American Diabetes Association recommend very high blood sugars and higher than normal A1Cs, especially for us diabetics? There are 3 reasons. The first one is a kicker, and it's a total letdown by our medical community. But the truth is the truth. And I'll quote the great engineer turned doctor, Richard Bernstein, MD, a type 1 diabetic himself, who's arguably broken more ground than anyone in history when it comes to diabetes living normal lives. He's now 84 and still has a vibrant practice. The central principle of Dr. Bernstein's solutions for diabetics is that they have the right to normal blood sugars like a non-diabetic would. Even when we eat, he wants our blood sugars to remain constant and within those healthy ranges. He believes in an A1C for a type 1 and type 2 diabetics to be in the 4s. Yes, I said it, the 4s. And he shows you how and how to do it safely. And he states the reason for the ADA standards is so that doctors can hedge their bets and avoid the risk that a diabetic patient could die from hypoglycemia or low blood sugars. Dr. Bernstein said, if they go too low, the doctor's afraid of getting sued, so they don't want any part of it. Imagine a doctor who specializes in diabetes that has over 2,000 patients. If they go blind, suffer congestive heart failure, kidney disease, or their legs get amputated, then that is a natural consequence of having diabetes. If the patient suffers diabetic complications with blood sugars that are in the ADA's target ranges, then the long-term known consequences of the disease could never justify a lawsuit. He continues to state, if a patient with chronically high blood sugars gets a foot amputated because of non-healing ulcers, insurance companies will pay for it and the doctors won't get sued. Now, if one patient out of those 2,000 dies of hypoglycemia, then that doctor can get sued. For example, they get into a fatal car accident because they pass out. So for safety margins, they're not going to allow their patients to be anywhere near normal blood sugars because of the risk of hypoglycemia becomes far too great. So to hedge their practices and their organizations as a whole, they would want blood sugars to be 2 or 3 times higher than what is considered normal. The bottom line, it's not really about your health per se, but about the survival and the profitability of the institutions. I'll put a link to the great doctors' videos down in the description box for more details on proper blood sugar control. Second, As you are now aware, because you are subscribed, you know that doctors are not nutritionalists. Diabetes is a disease of the diet. And for the most part, they have not had a single course in nutrition during the entire stint of medical school. So they have to stick to the high carbohydrate, food guide pyramid diet protocol for all of their patients, including us diabetics. Thus, diabetic patients are then encouraged to eat clean, wholesome carbs at every meal, including starches, fruits, snacks. But they just have their patients clean up their diets by, say, substituting brown bread instead of white bread, replacing sodas for juices, oatmeal for cereals. But as you now know, a carb is a carb is a carb, especially to that overworked pancreas. What is worse, the only way of treating that is with the heavy-duty, fast-acting insulins that violently whiplash one's blood sugars up and down like a roller coaster, thus making it impossible to maintain low and controlled blood sugars. The violent swings in blood sugars not only impact life expectancy, but your day-to-day life. Mood swings, the hunger, work productivity, relationships, depression, to even one's sexual health and drive. It's devastating. Many doctors don't have that team, including an in-house nutritionist trained and knowledgeable in low carbohydrate diets, such as using above ground cruciferous vegetables and lean proteins, and then using the corresponding oral medications and slower, flatter insulins like regular insulin and NPH for well-controlled blood sugars. This then creates that flat line and easily controllable blood sugars in that target range. And before you blame the doctors, we also have to look at the other side of the equation. How many patients who are once diagnosed would be compliant with a low carbohydrate diet right out of the gate? The vast number of doctors who also happen to be diabetic follow a low carbohydrate model for themselves, as we have been discussing on this channel. But what one doctor has said to me in private already is that his patients do not, for the most part, want to be told what to eat. They are set in their ways. Those of you who are watching this right now, you're motivated to live that long, healthy life. But for many diabetics, they are unfortunately not willing to make those hard sacrifices. They still want to eat and enjoy the high sugary kids' breakfast cereals in the morning. But hey, they have been given those fast-acting insulins, which the doctors say, and I'll quote, "Take as much as you need." You and I are in full control of our fate. Diabetes will not be an easy road for many of us to navigate, but you now know what needs to be done and the obstacles in your way. It all revolves around one key element: controlling and understanding carbohydrates. The simple truth: keeping blood sugars as flat and as controlled as possible will extend your life. But finding that healthcare team that understands this core principle will be your other biggest challenge. In the description box below, I will have those two important links for you to watch from Dr. Bernstein, one on blood sugars and the other an eye-opener on protein requirements. For those of you brand new to this channel, I'll create an important playlist for you with videos related to what we as diabetics can eat. In the video, Can Diabetics Eat Sweet Potatoes? Our nutritional experts claim sweet potatoes can prevent diabetes and help control blood sugars better. They even call it a superfood. Is there something special a sweet potato has over traditional white potatoes or any other starchy-based carbohydrate? In the video, Can Diabetics Eat Watermelon? You will understand the impact watermelon will have on your blood sugars. Does the nutrient value of this fruit outweigh the sugar content and the consequences it will have on your health? Many of our experts flat out state watermelon is healthy for you as a diabetic to eat. Really? Okay. Today, you will be presented with new knowledge, a deeper understanding of the relationship between sugars and fruit and how the body metabolizes and uses it. You will know if this fruit in particular is right for you. If you're on a desktop or laptop, use that mouse to click that box. If you're on your mobile device, tap that with your fingers. The first is the link to subscribe to this all-important life-saving channel. The second is the link to that playlist mentioned above. So have a great and productive day, and we will see you soon with another new episode, which I have said are always released weekly. Bye for now.